Ladies and gentlemen, it's another episode of Questlove Supreme. I'm your host, Questlove. We have the almighty Team Supreme with us. Fonticolo, brother, how's it been going?
I'm good, man. I'm doing yoga.
Nice.
Hey, Vinyasa Flow Tigolo, bro. I'm out here. You know what I'm saying? We down with dog and pigeon posing on all these hoes, nigga.
Word up.
Yeah, that's nice. All right, cool. We Fonticolo going to get his toll booth pass to go past 80, maybe to 90 or 100.
Yes, I'm taking you to Bikrams. I'm taking hot yoga.
I run. Yeah, we can do that yoga. Come out there. I'll run with you. Yeah, we'll get it in.
Damn, that's what's up, y'all. Steve, you next dope. As Steve lights a cigarette.
Yeah, I'm doing yoga too. I haven't started yet, but everything's cool. Working on a lot of stuff.
Steve, we should actually. You're doing. I know. I don't know in your mind if it's like mocking or not mocking, like with the network and all that. But I got to say, in the last 3 weeks, personally witnessing, like you're doing like major shit. Like you're not just like, doing like rinky dink jazz records. Like I almost feel like you're out here trying to save jazz music. Like
we got a lot of records coming out. It's JMI is the name of the label. We're coming up on 20 records. It's been like 5 years that we've been around, and finally got you on the label recently. Hey. We're mixing that record with David Murray and Ray Angry. And yep. Yeah, there's a lot of great jazz labels out there, obviously still doing it, but we're doing it all analog with tape and never touching digital in any way. So I can't find another label that's doing it like that, where it's completely purist and old school like that. So yeah, we're proud of it. And you know what else is turning 5 years old? The Sugar Network.
Wait, the Sugar Network is 5 years old?
That's correct. This month.
Word up.
You started in 2018.
Yeah. Started shortly after Questlove Supreme.
It's a movement, man. The Sugar Network is the Army, better yet, the Navy.
Well, it's like a little fan club for this podcast. Basically, that's how it started, but it's expanding.
It absolutely is. All right. Wait. So just to let me know, JMI, is your logo at least close to the CTI label? Like,
there are some similarities. We stole some of their design aspects for our stuff, but not the logo specifically.
All right.
But yeah,
keep it true. Keep it old school. Laia, how's it going?
Oh, it's going good. I got the flu, but I don't want to miss speech. So
okay. You got the flu?
Yeah, talking to a bunch of niggas during Grammy weekend will make you sick. Trying to book people, but in the good news, Questlove Supreme, honey. I was on the strip with my leg and my skirt up. Like, come on, Nas. Come on, Leslie Jones. Like, yeah. So I was working.
Nas might just visit.
He said he would. He said to me he would. He said to me, yeah, I want to. Yeah.
Oh, snap. Okay. That's what's up. That's what's up. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that every guest that comes on the show is an icon. I will say that, this interview is close to my heart because as a founder, leader of one of the most legendary groups in hip hop, a group really, really responsible for laying out the carpet for a group like the Roots to come down and be able to have a career. I will say that, this gentleman has pretty much made a profound impact on the music industry. Just with the level of I guess the first wave of Black Joy. Like we weren't using terms like Black Joy back in 1992, 1993. We just basically called it alternative rap, but it's almost like I never liked the term alternative rap because Lauryn Hill once told me that alternative rap just means like no skills. And that's definitely not the case. Besides being one of two people in the hip hop field that have won Best New Artist for the Grammys. As far as hip hop winning Best New Artist, I will say that his group's debut album really just set a high watermark for just music, period, just a feeling. Definitely a blueprint that I followed. And this conversation is seriously long overdue. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to Questlove Supreme. All right. I don't know if we ever had a one title person before. So I'm used to saying like the full name. I don't want to say welcome Todd Thomas.
Oh,
Professionally known as
Oh.
Speech.
Name out there, cuz.
oh, I didn't even know.
I'm sorry. He's like, nigga, did you just say my government name?
Government out there, cuz.
I know, but I'm trying to make it like you're a dignitary or a head of state, not just like I'm not trying to be the popo on you. No, speech. Welcome, please welcome Speech to Questlove Supreme. Thank you, man.
Yo, that all of these words very much mean the world to me. I appreciate it, man. It's good to be here. It's been a minute, man. It's been a minute.
It's been a good minute. It's been a good minute.
Yeah, facts.
Where are you talking to us right now from? Where are you at?
This is my studio. I call it the podium, and I'm at my crib. So on my property, I have a separate building, and it's my studio. So I'm in here.
In the
Atlanta,
state of Georgia? Okay.
Yeah, state of Georgia, Fayetteville area. Yep.
That's what's up.
So you've stayed in Georgia that entire time of your career?
Since 1987. So I'm from Milwaukee.
Ooh.
And you from Milwaukee?
I remember that. Yo, didn't we meet in Milwaukee? I know that you have roots in Milwaukee, but I'm trying to figure out if I met you in Milwaukee once.
Yeah. That wasn't the first time we met, but you guys were rocking a show at Summerfest, which is one of the largest music festivals in the world, actually.
Yeah.
I sell roasted corn at Summerfest. My father opened up a hot roasted corn stand business at Summerfest 46 years ago. And so my wife and I have been doing that business. Well, I was working at it since I was 9 years old.
Right.
But my wife and I started working that business, taking it over for my dad for probably, I'm going to say 16 years or so. And so one year the Roots was rocking, I want to say on the Miller stage or one of the stages.
Yeah.
It's at Summerfest. And I came backstage and hung out with y'all while you were there.
All right. So I'm totally just going to throw away my initial questions because now you piqued my curiosity because I too am in the food world, but I gotta know, like, how do you maintain that business?
So my dad, he was trying to get his foot in the door because we're the one and only Black owned food company in Summerfest. And Summerfest is huge. I can't say that enough.
I know.
And so basically he wanted to get his foot in the door. They were offering soul food as an option, so on and so forth. But he was just studying the landscape and realized that roasted corn would kill for the audience that tended to go to Summerfest at that time. And so he was going in as a roasted corn business. And it started off literally bananas. Like so many people were into it. Like you were describing the dude that was outside of SOBs. Mm-hmm. It was lines around the block for this corn. And not to mention, a Black man selling it, all Black workers creating this corn, roasting this corn, which is a big production. Like, unlike the dude that was on the streets, ours was a very big production. So we had tons of basically 600-700 degree roasters that were lined up, and we would put the corn on these big metal sheets and then turn the corn over once one side was done. And it was a production to watch as well, and people just loved it. And so as a 9 years old, from that point on, I started doing it, just working there. And then, you know, when I got old enough and my father was too old to run it, my queen and I took it over. And
was he a chef by nature, or
no? Not at all. In fact, he learned how to roast it the best that he could, and it was just dope. Everybody loved it, and it was way above any competitors at other, you know, state fairs, because Milwaukee also has a state fair, which is really big. It was way bigger than the people that sold it there. So everybody just started falling in love with Robbie's roasted corn. And that was my dad, whose name is Robert. So he started that whole tradition.
On a stick.
You know how to, no, not on a stick. No, you roast it on a roaster, and then you pull back the husk, and you let that husk, you hold the husk. So you keep the husk. You know, a lot of people take the husk off.
Mexican style. Okay.
Exactly. And you hold that husk, and then you wrap a paper towel around it. You dip it. We dip it in butter, like literally a crock pot full of butter. We dip it in there. And then we have various seasonings, you know what I mean? From anything from lemon pepper to Mexican style, which is like a mayonnaise and so on and so forth rubbed on it. It's dope. It's
better
like
than
a
fried
whole
chicken.
thing. It really is, actually. It's incredible. It's incredible. Wow. Yeah.
And it's just a local phenomenon. You guys never expanded outside of Milwaukee, or?
Not in a huge way, not yet. Like, we strive to get into Disney World and stuff like that, and just we're unsuccessful doing that. But the truth is that we've done like Atlanta, which is where I live. We've done Chicago, some places regional to where we're sort of based out of, but we haven't taken it national or anything like that.
Roots Picnic 2024.
That's what I'm saying. But even at that,
consider it done. I would do that for real.
Shit. Are you growing your own corn? Do you have a farm?
Like, no. We have.
I know this is a music podcast, but I'm just really interested.
No, I get it. I get it. No, we source our corn from different growers. So obviously corn is very seasonal. So we try to make sure we get the best corn. We try to get a mixture of white and yellow corn.
Yeah, white.
And so it's really, really delicious. And it's just, it's more flavorful than your normal yellow corn. And so we get it sourced from different producers and you know, farmers and stuff like that.
His mind. You see this?
Yeah, I'm because I mean, I just purchased a farm. I don't have plans on utilizing it as a farm. Yes, there's a greenhouse to grow like vegetables and whatnot, but that's just like for my personal consumption. Right. But because I'm getting into the alternative food space and all those things, and you know, not to mention there's a brother from Milwaukee, actually. Will Allen basically pioneered inner city urban farming and kind of really like was the pioneer of that. He got a MacArthur Genius Grant for doing it. And I became friends with his daughter. And, you know, I thought it was silly. They're like, yo, man, no, we need to teach our people how to farm, how to, because
for real.
Because the thing is that, you know, and I'm a result of it. Like growing up in Philadelphia, I didn't realize that, you know, we had to go outside to the suburbs. We had to go to Upper Darby to find fresh fruits, fresh
organic food. Yeah.
Right. You don't have that in the inner city. And so that's what made me interested in plant-based foods and developing that. And not like, you know, I think people tend to think like we want to replace it or whatever. Yes, granted. Yes, I know Patrick from Impossible Foods wants to replace, you know, meat, which, hey, more power to. I believe in 20 years, what we know as food now will be phased out and will be like plant-based. But yeah, I'm just really interested when people get into the alternative space for those things.
Yeah, totally.
Wow.
Shout out to Milwaukee. That's dope. Okay. So Will Allen, dope.
Yes, absolutely. Now I'll get back to my real question. What was your very first musical memory?
I would say it was seeing the Jackson 5 show on Saturday mornings. That was probably my first musical memory. And watching Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5, that cartoon / I think they might have had like real scenes as well. So I think it was a mixture.
Well, it was a cartoon.
Yeah.
Slight trivia.
And then they had a variety show too. So
Right. The variety show of 77. I just found out that when the Silvers moved from Tennessee to Los Angeles, you know, the Silvers, you know, they had notoriety as a singing group. They've been singing together since they were kids. But when they got to Hollywood, one of the first jobs that two of the brothers had was one of the brothers in the Silvers was the voice of Jackie, and I believe Jermaine. Yeah, Jackie and Jermaine were voiced by members of the Silvers.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's deep. I did not know that.
That
That's
is
not
something
the
that
Jacksons?
we never mentioned that on the Leon Silvers episode.
No, we didn't. Mm-mm.
Yeah, I think it was
Wow.
Edmund and Ricky Silvers, I believe. I believe it was them. Yeah. So
Wow.
could you tell me the very first album that you purchased with your own money, not given to you? But
Yeah. Well, I don't remember the joint with my own money, but I remember my grandmother gifting me a 45 of Michael Jackson. Well, was it the Jackson 5? It was. What was that song?
Shake Your Body Down to the Ground.
Shake Your Body Down to the Ground.
Good.
That was
you guessed it.
probably, yeah. That was my first memory of having a record that was my own. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't buy it, but I owned it. It was my record. Like that was the beginning of my record collection, and it was just a 45. Yeah.
What did your parents do for a living?
My mom, both of them are activists. My mom is the owner of the largest Black newspaper in Wisconsin. It's called the Milwaukee Community Journal. So that's my mom. My dad is an entrepreneur in many ways. So he started gas stations. He started catering businesses. The first Black-owned fast food restaurant in Milwaukee. He started a nightclub called the Fox Trap, which turned into an arcade. And so, he was just a serial entrepreneur. He never owned all those things at one time, but he would do this business for a while, then he would transfer to this business and that business. So that's what my mom and dad both did. Yeah.
Well, I want to know, how easy is it, or how easy was it for Black entrepreneurs to start a business? Because, for most of us, you start a business, first of all, by getting a bank loan.
Exactly.
And usually for a lot of people that I hear talking about, post-civil rights experience for Black people, a lot of the Jim Crowing attitudes pre-1968 were still happening.
Facts.
Long after, like way into the 70s, way into the 80s. Even one of the funniest stories I ever heard was George Johnson, who started the Johnson Hair Empire in Chicago. They single-handedly funded Soul Train, with Afro Scene commercials and all that stuff. And George Johnson tells a story of going to at least 20 banks in Chicago and getting rejected by them all when he wants to start a business. Yeah. And I believe he says that his uncle told him, I'm going to show you how to buck the system. I want you to return to blah, 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 blah bank. And instead of saying that you want to borrow $2,000 to start a business, say you want to borrow $2,000 to take your wife on vacation.
What?
Wow.
And they did it.
Wow.
What's the reasoning? I don't get it.
Again, like we don't talk about probably what the main gripe of the systematic racism in the United States is the rampant denial of bank loans to start businesses.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so
that's true.
So as long as you're not starting a business, we don't want you to grow your wealth.
Right.
We don't. I got it. Okay.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. So that's why I want to know, like, how is your dad able to start all these businesses? Because this is a rare situation for me to hear someone that has like a dream and it goes into fruition and manifests itself.
Yeah. I'm glad you asked that. They pulled money together from other Black families and people. And so that was their startup money. And then my mother, she was a school teacher. And so after the riots of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. being murdered, there was riots.
In Milwaukee?
In Milwaukee. Oh, of course, across the nation, but in Milwaukee as well. And they were they looted and destroyed a lot of the black businesses. Well, while those black businesses was striving to get back on their feet and got back on their feet, they needed somebody to advertise the fact that they were open again and ready for business. And the major newspapers in Wisconsin were refusing to cover these stories. So they asked my mother to put together a pamphlet. Initially, she did it. It's called the Soul City Shopper. And she was just doing it for free. Her goal was to try to get people in the community to realize that these stores were back open. That started to happen. Other black people that had a little bit of money scraped it together and helped them to start what's now called the Milwaukee Community Journal. My dad used that money to start his first business, which was a small gas station. And then when that did pretty well, he used that money, so you get where I'm going with this, to start his next business. And he was the most, in 1980, he was one of the most successful black business people, not black people, business people in Milwaukee. But when he got to that level, the city literally systemically destroyed him tax-wise. And they came after him, they targeted him. He had a huge target on his back, and they destroyed most of his businesses. My mom, on the other hand, was able to keep hers and move forward. But he didn't have businesses, I would say, past, I'm going to say like 1987, my dad didn't have any other businesses that he was able to do in Milwaukee. That's how bad they put him into bankruptcy, tax issues that he had to fight, all the money with lawyers. They spent tons of money trying to fight all of these things and just, fell underwater. It actually destroyed my mom and dad's marriage at that time. So, I mean, all of these things obviously have effects. You know what I mean?
Wow. I would think owning a newspaper would be seen more as a threat than starting an independent business. Like, on your mom's side of things, like, how was she able to run that community?
The segregated mind state, we weren't literally segregated, but the segregation mind state really played a big role in her being able to sustain. Because the major newspapers refused to give coverage to a lot of the black stories, black death, black achievements, black joy, as you said earlier, her paper was that sole resource for quite a while. And then later, and that's the same, by the way, with my father's drive-through restaurant he had called Robbie's. And McDonald's
Name all of his businesses again.
Robbie's 2, Robbie's 3,
exactly,
5.
Robbie's. And so at that time period, McDonald's was afraid to have drive-throughs in the black community. They didn't want to do it. They had some locations, but they refused to open a drive-through. Well, my father used their refusal as an opening to start a business that did have a drive-through. Of course, just like any other people, black people needed convenience on their way to work. They wanted to grab something to eat, go to work, so on and so forth. And his business took off. So it was basically their own ignorance and their own refusal to serve black people that allowed my mom and dad both to have a career.
Okay. Is your entire family based in Milwaukee, or just like your mom and dad? Like, your entire family based, where are they?
No. So my father's family is from Tennessee.
Okay. Where the South at? That's what he was asking. Where's the South?
Yep. It's from Tennessee. And then my mother's family is from East St. Louis. So they both came to Milwaukee for, exactly. Oh, you from East St. Louis?
My mama's from St. Louis.
There you go.
I is from everywhere. I learned something new every episode. I did not know you had St. Louis roots.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. East Kirkwood, all that stuff. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. So then they came to Milwaukee and met each other during college years. And, so there was some family there. But, back in these days, there was this huge diversion from the South to the Midwest to the West because of lack of job opportunities. And so factories were opening in the Midwest. And that's why, Milwaukee was one of the places that was on our radar back then as black people. Yeah.
That's ill.
All right. This is a two-parter. One, what year did you leave Milwaukee?
1987, the year I graduated high school. So I left literally a week after I graduated. I came to Atlanta.
All right. Now, part two of that question is, and this is weird that you leave Milwaukee for Atlanta, in which the unfortunate commonality thread of the two cities is that both cities are well known for two horrific
Race
crimes.
riot. Oh, okay, go ahead.
No, two horrific crimes against groups of black people.
Atlanta,
of course, the Atlanta
murders.
child murderers and Jeffrey
And
Dahmer.
Jeffrey Dahmer.
I keep forgetting that's Milwaukee.
That's
Right.
Milwaukee.
Wow.
And I didn't know until the Netflix series that he started back in 1978. Like I thought this was happening like around like 90,
Wow.
89, 90, 91, but I didn't realize that his process was way slower. But I never had a chance to interview anyone from Milwaukee that, or know many black people from Milwaukee. So I'm asking you to represent your entire city here. But did you have any family that was affected by what was happening with Dahmer at the time, or like was that even in the news? Like were they reporting like missing black people, or is this just like another murder this week?
No, it was definitely a huge story in Milwaukee. And my dad lived in the same complex, not in the same like area that Dahmer lived as Dahmer. So when my mother and father divorced, his apartment was there. And so it was a very big issue. When we found out about it, when it became big news and nationwide news, as a family, we were affected in the sense of knowing dad was there. My father was there. So
wow.
Yeah, it was a very, very big deal. It wasn't just one of those sort of like things like, oh, something's happening over there. No, it was definitely. And by the way, Milwaukee is very black. So like Milwaukee,
that
the
I
city,
did not know.
Yeah,
We just think Laverne and Shirley and Happy Days.
Exactly. No, the city itself, I want to say is 60 or so % black. So if you go to Milwaukee, the city itself, because like Georgia, I know people come down to Georgia. Georgia is one thing, but Atlanta is another thing, right? And so it's the same difference with Milwaukee, and it's a very black city. Yeah.
Can you talk about that? What it was like to be in Atlanta in 1987?
Yeah. So Milwaukee, I'm going to talk about Atlanta. But Milwaukee was a very the disparities between black and white people is and was so crystal clear in Milwaukee. Most Milwaukee black populations were either poor or lower middle class, somewhere in there. And white people, on the other hand, had a much better shot at, being able to rise up the ladder in America in a sense. And so when I left Milwaukee in 1987, right out of high school, I came to Atlanta. And for the first time in my life, I saw black affluence and people being able, just black opportunity, black diversity, conscious blacks over here with dashikis and locks and stuff like that, and corporate blacks over there.
Yes. I mean, bougie Negroes over here.
Wait. So that was in Atlanta?
That was in Atlanta. 1987.
I'll be very honest with you.
That is Atlanta.
I'll be very honest with you. I had a few friends and family members in Atlanta at the time, and really before the Renaissance, which between you and like Bobby Brown, really Bobby Brown was the first person I heard like, wait, the success you have with this album, you're moving to Atlanta, Georgia, instead of like
post Olympics, right?
Baldwin Hills and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But for me, I just always wanted to know, like I thought y'all created what we know as the boho lifestyle, because I just thought like,
speech. Speech created that. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I thought like, okay, they're the pioneers of that. But you're saying that you saw that
definitely
alternative boho scene in Atlanta.
Yeah. So the West End of Atlanta, right? It's an area where there's a lot, well, especially before it got regentrified more recently. It was a very cultural landmark in Atlanta where you had, African priests and African dance companies and teaching about the importance of drumming and the importance of language through music and mathematics through music. Like these types of things were being taught and spoken of in the West End in particular, which is where Arrested Development was really born in Atlanta. Like me and my brother Headliner, who was the first person I asked to be in the group. He used to cut hair. I call him headliner because he was incredible at barbering, like the man. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you had all of these HBCUs there, right? So you have Morehouse.
Down the street.
Yeah, exactly. So you got Spelman, Morehouse, Clark Atlanta University, so on and so forth, Morris Brown. So all of that area was bubbling with culture and with revolutionary, ideas and vision. So yeah, definitely. I think people who would later see Arrested Development, they would know, like if they were in that area, they would know that we came from that sort of frame of mind. But I will say we added the more rural aspects. So like what you're talking about as far as the need, when you said my man Will Allen was a pioneer in the sense of us getting back to the land and understanding the importance of land growth. That's the tip Arrested Development in particular was on, even back in the early 80s, late 80s and early 90s, just trying to take us back to that root. So our videos were unpurposely that kind of energy. If you remember the Tennessee video and People Every Day, it was always in that rural South, just to be able to bring us back to that, that eco self-determination, grow our own food, do our own thing type of energy.
So, to hear you describe it, I would assume that your parents were they musically inclined at all, or did you have siblings?
So yeah, I did. I had a brother.
Your brother.
My brother Terry. And then my mom was big on adoption and on fostering. So throughout my childhood, my mom would foster numerous kids, and then one of them that she actually adopted was from Accra, Ghana. His name was Bright Boateng. So he lived with me as a child. And so I did have siblings. No, my parents weren't particularly into music, but I will say my dad, being an entrepreneur, when he started his club, it was called the Foxtrot, one of the hottest clubs in Milwaukee at the time. I started falling in love with DJing at that time. I was 13, and I became a DJ at that club because of just falling in love with music. So I wouldn't say he taught me from like being musically inclined, but getting all those promo records back in the day, because as a nightclub, he would get promo records from all the major labels. So, I remember you posting recently about Yellow Magic Orchestra, right? And I remember getting, vinyl from those days. They used to poke a hole in the bottom of it to say that it was promotional.
Right.
Yeah. And so I would get vinyl, and my dad, not knowing about music, would ask me to basically curate what his DJs would play that night. So I was like always digging into the crates, as they say. So I think that's where I was sort of taught music in a sense, was through that, as opposed to them teaching me, them having musically inclined skills. You know what I mean?
Why'd you leave Milwaukee? Okay. I'm just curious. I'm sorry. Why'd you leave Milwaukee in the first place?
Milwaukee, the opportunity was very rare in Milwaukee. Like no one had made it out of Milwaukee except for Al Jarreau before us.
Yeah, he from Milwaukee?
He's from Milwaukee. Yeah, he's from Milwaukee.
And he had Cuckoo Cow.
And Cuckoo Cow was much later. Cuckoo Cow was much later. Yeah. So at that time, Cuckoo Cow, yeah. So that's
he has a documentary on Amazon. You should check it out.
Shit. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, so like at that time, nobody was making it from Milwaukee. Eric Benea's from Milwaukee. That was later. You know what I'm saying? So there was a lot of things that was later. But at that time, there was nobody making it. There was no opportunities. I used to tour Detroit to try to spend time with Juan Atkins. I'm sure you're familiar with Juan Atkins.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, so like Juan Atkins was my electronic music god. So like,
wait, he was nice to you?
Atkins, he was very nice to me. In fact, he liked my group at the time, which was before Arrested Development, called Attack. And so that was like the closest opportunities we had was like Detroit, you know what I mean? And obviously in hip hop, even Detroit wasn't on yet. You know what I mean? Chicago wasn't on yet. So
yeah.
So
Atlanta, Atlanta, but Atlanta wasn't either though, really, technically, right?
No, it wasn't. But Atlanta had much more opportunity than Milwaukee. So that's why I chose Atlanta. Plus, I wanted to be in the South. Like I spent all my summers with my grandmother in Tennessee. And I fell in love with the South. I fell in love with the whole idea of the South. And especially the nature aspect, not obviously, you know, oppression and slavery, you know, not that, but like the realities of land ownership and self-determination of growing your own food, exchanging food from one household to another. So if you didn't have money, which my grandmother didn't, she still had everything because the next door neighbor had collards and the other neighbor had, you know, sugar, and the other neighbor had yams and meat. And so it was this self-determined community or communal of the South that I fell in love with, you know?
Wow. I feel like that's progressive thinking, because I would just think in the late 80s, like everyone I knew was still trying to migrate to the North, especially where hip hop was going. I mean, Jermaine Dupri himself, like, moved to New York City. And, you know, it wasn't until like, you know, the kind of gentrification and outsource, well, not even outsourcing, but just the overpricing of city living is now made a reverse, where now people are
coming down,
considering back down south now. Well, what was your first musical experience in terms of starting a band or starting a group? And
so I came to Atlanta to go to school because I sucked at school in Milwaukee. I graduated with a 0.9 average. Which
that's impossible speech.
Yeah, which is a big time F.
It's under an F.
Right.
Exactly. That's under an F. You know what I'm saying? That's a G. And so, so I came to Atlanta because the Art Institute of Atlanta was the only school that I had applied to that would allow me to come. And I even had to write a letter of acceptance there to tell them that I was going to change my tune, so on and so forth. So the first week I got there, I put up a flyer because I wanted to start a crew. And I was a DJ, but I was rapping more and more and more. And so I put up a flyer for a DJ, and I hung it up at the lunch counter area, you know, where people were, you know, hanging out. And this brother named Tim Barnwell, later headliner, was looking at the flyer. And so I said, yo, you know, my name's Speech, blah, blah, blah. And we just connected from there. And then we just started doing music, vibing. I started working for a brother named Butch Winston at Kiss 104 as the DJ. Because back then, you know, DJs, not every DJ knew how to scratch. You know what I mean? So a lot of DJs were still mixing old school, where it was the record faded out and the next record faded in, but it wasn't on beat and all that. You know, this is early years of hip hop. So, you know, I was a DJ that actually knew how to scratch. I was studying DST and, you know, all of these types of cats, you know, Jazzy Jeff, you know what I mean? And so on and so forth.
You said you introduced yourself to Tim, headliner, as Speech. How did you, can you tell us the origins of you choosing that name? Yeah,
so in Milwaukee, when I DJ, I was named DJ Peach, Peech. And it's because of the size of my head and the light skin complexion, and, you know what I'm saying, like that kind of vibe. My forehead being extra nice. And so
and LL Cool J was taken already.
Exactly. And LL Cool J was taken already.
Yeah.
By the way, we're both Scorpios, me and LL. Both of us are named Todd. Well, James Todd. So so I put an S in front of Peach when I started rhyming. And to me, I wanted to rebrand myself. I knew I was going to the Peach State, and I didn't want to be known as MC Peach. I thought that was whack. And so I was like, okay, let me put an S in front of it. Now it makes sense. I'm rhyming now. I'm doing I'm letting the DJ sort of go to the background, and my DJ, and I should say, go to the background of my movement, and let me take Speech. So I just put an S in front of Peach.
Okay. Who, hip hop wise, before you go to Atlanta, who were you sort of, I guess, more attracted to in terms of like where hip hop was at the time? Well, I mean, there really wasn't. I mean, there was kind of a West Coast or whatever, but like, what was hip hop in Milwaukee at the time?
Well, Milwaukee was interesting because we liked all of it. So we liked World Class Wrecking Crew from the West Coast. We liked Egyptian Lover from the West Coast. But we loved house music from neighboring Chicago, you know what I'm saying? So we were heavy on house music, but we loved DC and the go-go scene. We loved hip hop, obviously, from the whole East Coast, New York. So we liked all of it. And as a DJ, I played all of that, you know what I mean? So I liked all of it. Like, I think that was the unique sort of entry for me musically, and my musicality was such that all of it to me was dope, as opposed to just one or two groups that really sort of dictated my direction or what I thought was ill. I liked all of it. You know what I mean? It was all dope to me.
Okay. So in going to Atlanta, for you, like, what was it like? How do you take it from a social connection to, okay, let's see if we have something here as a musician? First of all, did you break your promise to the art school? Did you finish?
I did. I finished.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
I finished with a 3.3, mind you, which I totally repented. Back. You know what I'm saying? I came back.
You was doing something that you liked, so
yeah. Well, it's funny. I was doing something that I liked, but I'll be honest. It really was my Black consciousness that made me do well at school, because I wanted to be excellent as a Black man. Like that was really my intention. Like, I felt like I wasn't being excellent prior, and I wanted to really come with it. Like I wanted to come with it. So I studied harder. I was studying the Black Panthers. I was studying groups that was about our development, and they motivated me to do better. Like, okay, I need to do better. You know what I'm saying? So I did.
I see that.
Well, wait, you had a group before Arrested Development.
Yeah, I did. Called Attack. Yeah.
Okay, good. So who was in Attack, and like what were you guys more or less like stylistically, what were you like?
I think we were a mix between UTFO and Run DMC, if I had to say. And you know,
you got demos?
You know, I do. In fact, we got records that we released back then. And, they're like classic joints that, you know, collectors got. And because we only pressed 200-300, copies. So it's nothing huge. But in Milwaukee, that was huge, because we was the first rap group to put out records and to do our thing. So a lot of the fans that we had in Milwaukee loved it. But as I was saying, we couldn't break past Milwaukee. So even working with Juan Atkins, so it just never happened for us. But in the group was myself, a brother named T.A. Wiz, rest in peace, and Special K, who is now named DJ Kimmett, who's a beast as a DJ.
Hey, DJ Kimmett was in this?
DJ Kimmett and myself and T.A. Wiz was the group Attack.
Wow. I never knew that.
Yeah.
Kimmett, that's my guy, man.
Yeah, okay. DJ Kimmett's the dude. Yeah, he crushes it to this day. And he was our DJ, and I was a DJ / rapper, and TA was a rapper. TA was murdered, unfortunately, in the early 90s.
Were you guys opening for established acts, or like what were shows like in?
Yeah, so like with Attack, one of the sort of ways that we tried to get recognized was throwing parties ourselves. So my father, being an entrepreneur, would spend the money and hire DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, who at that time only had a single, Parents Don't Understand, or Girls of the World of Nothing But Trouble, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And back then they didn't have covers on singles a lot of times. So I didn't know what they looked like. We hired them, and I say it in quotes because it wasn't them. I learned that later. We hired them for like $3,000 or what have you. And they came and performed their one song and a few other things. It wasn't Jazzy Jeff, and it wasn't Fresh Prince. Fresh Prince, the guy I saw that night, was like 300-400 pounds. It didn't look anything like the Fresh Prince that we now know. And so that was our opportunity to open up for people. So we were striving to like use this entrepreneurial attitude to find ways to expose ourselves. Isn't that crazy?
That's wild. Yeah, that's crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah.
For a second, I was thinking, okay, Cash Money, Marvelous were there because, all right, I'm from Philadelphia, and both groups were sort of like kind of the same ilk. Skilled turntablist, humoristic humor, MC. Oh, that's crazy. That's not the first time I heard stories of grifting from the hip hop side. I think there was one dude that made a killing as Redhead Kingpin. I don't know if you remember.
Oh yeah,
Redhead Kingpin in the FBI. But
absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, for like a good year and a half, this guy was making a killing off of, scamming people doing nightclub gigs or whatever as Redhead Kingpin.
Yeah, that was like
that is crazy.
Back, we didn't have,
when did you
we didn't have album
realize?
covers.
When did you realize the jig was up?
For like as far as those catfish acts or
yes.
Yeah.
There were more. There were more.
No, it wasn't any more of that particular thing, but like when DJ Jazzy Jeff and Fresh Prince, when I first saw them, and I forget which single it was, the label allowed them to have a picture on the cover, and I was like, damn, and I think it was like a year later or so, and I'm like, wow. We got ripped off. And the show was whack. Their show was horrible. But I was like,
could he even scratch?
Nah, not. And that wasn't DJ Jazzy Jeff, who for me is my favorite DJ. So like,
did you ever tell him that story?
Actually, I haven't told him that story. No.
Wow, I can't wait to call Jeff about that one.
Yeah, exactly.
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
I think in Seattle, well, I don't want to say like, hey, we pulled the same scam, but there's a festival called Bumper Shoot in Seattle, and the stars just weren't in line for me and Tariq to be at that show. But, we were heavy believers in the show must go on. Like, we couldn't afford to give up one show.
Right.
And so, like, everyone but me and Tariq were there, and it was early enough for people to not know who the Roots were.
Right.
But until the last minute, one guy was like, wait a minute, that drummer's skinny. No. And then like it went from like one person to 5 people, and then it was like damn near a riot. But
exactly.
Dice Raw was Black Thought, and they just the check was in the mail, and like we just ran out of town. So yeah. We catfished the city once. Sorry, Seattle. I apologize for that. Why did you choose the name Arrested Development when you started the group? Like, was Arrested Development the next step after you imploded, or? Yeah,
so basically I left Milwaukee because I wanted to go to school and I wanted to get to another atmosphere, another vibe. We started off as a group called Secret Society in Atlanta. Then we had Disciples of a Lyrical Rebellion as our name. Then it was Arrested Development, and that's when we got our deal, right? So all of those names was just conceptual. If you remember in hip hop at the time, there was a lot of concept going on. So Public Enemy, for instance, was not just a music group, but they were a concept. You got the S1Ws, you got Flav, exactly, Terminator X, and even in other music styles, like even with Prince from the 80s on out, like he had Prince of the Revolution, and the keyboardist was a doctor, you know what I'm saying? Right. And it was like in the time, had that character that they play, and the whole mirror thing with Jerome. And so it's like, so the concept thing was something that was just, it was accessible. It was things that people were into. And I love the name. So I love like punk rock stuff as well at that time, and Dead Kennedys and stuff like this. It just had this certain ring to it. So for me, Arrested Development just felt right for what we was doing and the vibe we were on.
And in that moment, what was your concept for Arrested Development when you first started?
It was pretty much the same as what it is now. So like, our whole thing was almost like a play on Soul to Soul, where you had Jazzy B, who's like the DJ, but then he would have guests of different types singing on it. You know what I'm saying? Exactly right. So like,
and even Nelly Hooper and
exactly right.
Makers
exactly right. So that was sort of the energy with us, but it was more of headliner's the DJ, I'm the producer, MC, and I would invite every show. I would invite African drummers on. I would invite African dance troupes to come and rock with us. So live painters to come and rock with us on stage. So that was the energy of Arrested Development then, and to some extent or another now.
So funk jazz got it from you.
I would say yes. Yeah. Funk jazz, my man Jason Orr, definitely was inspired by, what we were doing. Yeah.
Okay, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this question. Now, I mean, I'm a pop culture junkie, and one of my favorite comedies of all time also happens to share the name of your band. Now, I knew there was a situation with Vernon Reid and the Wayans family in terms of Living Color and In Living Color. But actually, I believe in Vernon's situation, I believe Living Color actually, maybe for the pilot, took the logo of Living Color. So I know that it got to litigious proportions, but
Yeah.
I always wanted to know, when you own a name like Arrested Development, assuming that you own the name Arrested Development.
We do, yeah.
I know he did.
Does that, even if you're in, and I know you guys are still active, but do you have to be wholly active in order to maintain the name? And does that allow you, like, how does that happen when another entity comes along with your name? Like, I knew there was a situation where Prince actually owned the term "the family."
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when the family, the nothing compares to you, one and done group that he produced in '85,
Screams of
imploded.
passion.
Yeah, when they imploded, he still retained the rights to the name "the family." So when Diddy wanted to name his album, Puff Daddy and the Family for the No Way Out album, he actually had to break off Prince a little something, just to lease the name from him. But still, Prince still maintained that name. So when Arrested Development came out, was it like, is it a separate copyright for television shows, or when you own Arrested Development, it's for any entity that's named that? Like if I wanted cereal or a sport or just something, you own it. So how does that happen? Like, are you talking to Ron Howard or like?
Yeah, definitely.
Really?
Yeah. So what how trademarks work is that if the consumer is going to be confused about your product called Arrested Development and our product Arrested Development, then there's a trademark issue. So if there was a restaurant called Arrested Development, probably no problem. If there was, a corn stand called Arrested Development, probably no problem. But TV shows tend to, or can, if they're successful, have soundtracks that they put out on CD or record or whatever version is out at the time of music mediums. Sometimes they make movies. In those movies. Exactly. In those movies, there could be confusion as to when they put out a soundtrack and when we do. And so we had trademarked the name back in 92 or something. It wasn't like before we came out. We trademarked it after we came out because this was our first album. We're learning like, oh hell, we need to trademark the name. So we did have to take Ron Howard and Fox to court because they had stolen the name. And you mentioned a few other examples.
Did they know they were stealing the name?
No,
definitely. No,
Did they
knew.
Okay. I thought they tried to act like y'all. They didn't know who y'all were.
Oh, y'all caught us.
They knew.
Right.
They knew, but they assumed that we were washed up, we had no money, and that we couldn't fight. And so it was a wrong assumption. Yeah, they felt like we'll take it and just basically, just steamroll them. And they tried to do that because, these big corporations, they have a lot of money. They have long money, so they could go into court litigation
out,
court
right?
Yeah, they don't
a long time. And so I had to go into court to fight, and I had to tell the story of how we started, some of which I shared here, in front of the court to show the blood, sweat, and tears of what this group meant to me. So it wasn't just a trademark to me; it was a thing. You know what I mean? It was a baby in a sense. And so when the people that was in court then heard that story, Fox and Ron Howard just said, "Okay, we need to settle." And so we settled out of court. The show was already out at the time when we went to court, and we settled out of court.
That's what's up.
Wow. Always wanted to know that.
That was a night, and you were satisfied. I'm trying not to be in your pocket, but you were heavily satisfied.
Well, we were satisfied to an extent because they offered it. They could put our music on the show. There was all types of things we were negotiating, but we didn't know if the show was going to go well or not. So we just decided to go, with an X amount and just move on. And then if it went to streaming, we get another X amount. So things like that, we went into that kind of deal.
Wait, since we already did a Mal Jam episode, I correct me if I'm wrong. When Malcolm Jamal Warner left the Cosby Show, I believe that he did. All right, you're already agreeing with me. I knew.
What did he do?
No,
finish it. Yeah.
No. When he did his episode, I didn't know the name of the show, and I didn't know if I imagined that Theo became a teacher of a bunch of elementary school kids, but I definitely remember, I believe that Tennessee was the theme song to, Malcolm
new
Jamal
show.
Warner's. See,
The
I don't know.
spinoff. It was a spinoff. It was like a small spinoff.
But
right?
I don't know if he was Theo or if he just played a teacher, but I believe that I believe he was Theo.
He wasn't,
or was he Theo?
I can't remember.
He wasn't Theo, and it was his first spinoff, or not spinoff. It was just his first debut as the star of his own show, and they did use Tennessee as his theme song.
I didn't know if I imagined that or not.
First episode.
Yeah, I think they only did
the taping of that.
Yeah, they only did like 9 episodes,
exactly.
but
it didn't last. Yeah.
I forget the name of the show. On My Own, or it's always those sort of black sitcom things.
Yep, facts.
Here we go again, starring Malcolm Jamal Warner.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So, who, in terms of musicianship, or at least you as a producer, who's is anyone teaching you production by this point?
In terms of what were you making tracks on at that time?
Yeah, nobody taught me, unfortunately. I wish I probably would have had that, even though I was on a HR-16 Alesis drum machine, and in Sonic ASR-10, or before that, and in Sonic EPS-16.
EPS, okay.
So that was like my primary ways of, like, the whole first album, for instance, and second album was on those two instruments pretty much.
Wow.
Unless we hired somebody to come in, play horns, like on the song You, to play horns, or so on and so forth, pretty much my production was from that, those two things.
So how do the other members that we know of the group, speaking of like Dion Farris and Baba OJ,
we actually already had all of these members, but when we got signed to the deal, you can't tour with 20 members. You know what I'm saying? You can't, it's not financially feasible, right? For a new group to go on a tour. So I had to try to make the best decision as possible of who to bring out on the road and make this a sort of an official thing. Mm-hmm. In my mind at the time, it wasn't necessarily the official group members. It was just the people we could take on the road. It made sense. We all had different roles that we could play. And this was sort of stage one. Mm-hmm. But it sort of got solidified into that because that album was so big for us that, those members was those members. Now, I will say Dion wasn't ever in the group as a member. She was just a guest vocalist. But how me in particular and how we as a group rolled is we blurred the lines between who was in the group and who wasn't, in the sense of all of our, appearances, all of our press tours. If she was down with us, then she was down. Like, come on with us. You know what I'm saying? Just come rock with us, even though she wasn't actually in the group. And that's how it sort of got confused that she was actually in the group.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, sis, who was the dancer? I forget her name.
Eshi, yeah.
Eshi, yes. Okay. So how did you meet them or incorporate them into the group?
Yeah. So Ishi was basically, she auditioned. She was 13 years old, and we auditioned her sister, who was older than her, probably about 5 years older than her. And her sister was going on tour for the first time in her life with James Brown, I want to say. And so she couldn't do it. And so she suggested her sister, her younger sister, Ishi, which her real name is Tamika. And so she suggested Tamika. She came to audition for us. I actually didn't feel Tamika. I loved her dancing, but she was dressed sort of like Kwame with the polka dots and that energy. Right. And it wasn't the energy that Arrested Development was on. So I didn't totally feel her. Headliner, on the other hand, loved her style and her vibe, and felt like she could change into the more Afrocentric vibe. And he was right. I mean, she totally changed on her own. Like, once she got in the group, she changed her whole look. She cut off her hair. She had a bald head. She was like dope as ever. And she just had this total energy that I totally miss, but he saw that. Yeah.
Okay. So
I said, did she change her name for the group? I'm sorry, I had it on mute.
Yeah, she did.
Okay.
you know, I mean, I guess how most groups do, you know, people change their name when they start to sort of go into the entertainment realm as opposed to just using like Todd Thomas, you know what I'm saying? Like I use speech. So
Right.
her name was just Tamika Gaither. That was her
Right.
name, you know what I'm saying? So she looked up Black and what's her name stand for? Mocho Ishii. So anyway, it's something like Black Life. I think it's Black Life. And she looked that up and came up with the name Moncho Ishii.
See, in my mind, I thought like, all right, Speech is the ringleader, so he's like
Passing
giving
out
these
names.
titles,
Yeah.
giving these
Obi
titles
Ishii.
to
No, not at all, not at all. I only name that I gave, and it was more of just a, you know, a term of endearment was Headliner because he was, you know, he was so dope as a barber that you know, he was known for real. Like in the West End, he was that guy that the line was outside of the store waiting for him to cut hair. So I gave him the name Headliner, which made sense to me in a sense of, you know, somebody, you know, on the marquee being a headliner, stuff like that.
In y'all's episode of Unsung, you made mention of like I think you and Headliner's original arrangement was 90-10. It was a split. It was 90 you, I guess 10 him. What was your rationale in that in terms of like division of labor and, you know, what made that a fair deal to you?
For me, it was a matter of, you know, I'm producing the music, I'm the main writer of the lyrics. So, you know, just go back and listen to the record. And even on like Rainy Revolution, right? One of the songs on the debut. I would like, when the song comes on, I'm saying on the mic, yo, this is Headliner from Arrested Development, and I come here tonight to give thanks to the rain. And I'm talking, and throughout the record, I'm saying things. I would often do that on records as a, what do you call it? Like
a reference.
As a reference, exactly.
For him to come back and do it.
right.
For him to come back and do it.
That's right.
So my point is that, yeah. And so like when those things happen, these songs were concepts that I came up with on my own. So that's why, and so managers, generally speaking, got like 10 to 15, maybe 20% max. In my mind at that time, and I'm not saying I was a business dude because I wasn't. I was 21 years old, you know what I'm saying? So
you're learning along the way, right?
I'm learning very much along the way. So in my mind, I was like, even though you didn't write these joints, I still want to give you, and that was my viewpoint. You know what I'm saying? Like,
So you thought you was not thought, but you were giving him something for work that actually hadn't been.
Facts. I mean, that was my view at the time. You know what I'm saying? So yeah.
So in terms of your deal, y'all's deal with Chrysalis, was that who was actually signed like on paper, like to that deal?
Yeah, just me and Headliner were signed to that deal. And and I'll tell you why that happened, because as I said earlier, you know, we had 20 members. So it's a lot of people. And so when we got the deal, which was very unexpected, but of course we were hoping for a deal, but we got turned down by all the other labels. So when this deal finally came through, which was initially a single deal actually, that led to an album deal, I didn't exactly know at that time who was going to be out on the road. Who is this group? You know what I'm saying? Because we got 20 people. Who is the group? Like, so it was tough. So I knew me and Headliner. That part I knew. So when it was time to sign the deal, I went ahead and did it that way. And, you know, obviously then things blew up, but that's tough because when you sign stuff, you don't know how it's going to go at the time. Like you don't know the record's going to go, you know, crazy and all of that.
So were the members who weren't in the nucleus of Arrested Development, did they wind up being, you had an offspring group called Gumbo, correct?
Yeah.
Oh, I was like, I know.
Yeah,
I'm going
Gumbo.
on memory and shit. I was about to say, I thought you had something to do with Gumbo. Did the rest of the members go to Gumbo?
No. So Gumbo was a whole new, like, to me, they were my, like, you know, family tree, starting to develop a family tree. You know what I'm saying? Like sort of a native tongues, if you will, you know,
right? Where,
you know, they were going to be my Fugees in a sense, but the Fugees weren't out yet.
Okay. Gotcha. How long did it take to source a record deal? Like how long was the process of making a demo?
Literally 3 years, 5 months, and 2 days.
So that's where the title comes from.
Literally.
Wow. And what songs were y'all shopping? Like, what was on y'all's demo at the time?
You know, it changed over those years, you know what I'm saying? So when we first started shopping, it was a different version of Fishing for Religion. It might have had Mr. Wendell, I forget. Definitely not Tennessee, because in fact,
Was Tennessee last?
the last song.
Yo, it's always that way.
Exactly. Tennessee was the last joint, man. And it was only because I lost my grandmother, who I told you I spent all my summers with. And in that same week, I lost my brother, Terry. And so the last place I saw both of them was at her funeral in Tennessee. So Tennessee was the last joint that I wrote, and it ended up being our first single, our first hit too.
Man, the Prince sample in Tennessee.
Yeah.
How did y'all pull that off? Because he wouldn't let nobody sample.
Well, no. Actually, he was, but I know he was pricey.
He let
because like Nice and Smooth used "I Want to Be a Lover" and Hammer used "Pray."
Yep.
Oh, Nice and Smooth. No, they use
"I Want to Be a Lover." The sky's the limit.
They also use what you call it. They use Starfish.
Oh, Starfish and Coffee too.
Yeah.
Well, you know, Prince was against sampling at that time. You know, he didn't think it was music. You know what I'm saying? And
right.
And he was sort of offended. He was one of those people at the time that thought it was stealing, basically. And but I will say, you know, when we were released to stuff, the sampling world wasn't really solidified. Like we were saying rumors like if you were using less than 3 seconds, you're good. If you're not using the melody, you're good. If you're just using the beat, it's fine. So these were the sort of rules that were going around. It wasn't really solidified as to how that worked. And so when I sampled the word Tennessee, I didn't feel like it was even a thing, because I'm like, it's just a word. So it's like if you use something from a record like yo, you know, or huh, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it was sort of like that to me. It wasn't a thing, you know what I mean? That was how I was thinking at the time, you know.
As much as a Prince head that I am, I will actually say it might have taken me like 4 to 5 months for me to even realize that was a Prince sample.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
Is it? I still
Alphabet Street.
Alphabet Street.
We'll take her down, drive her to Tennessee.
Yep. Just one word. Take on a
wow.
I gotta ask. How much did they get y'all for?
So Prince did something really. Go ahead, bro.
No. Well, I just, typically most groups will pay 25 to 50,000 for something, but for one word, I get the feeling you're about to tell me it's expensive. Go ahead.
It was, and what he did, and this is pretty shrewd on Prince's behalf. What he did is he waited for it to hit to the top of the charts, and so we had already hit number 1 on the rap charts. We hit number 1 on the R&B charts. We got to number 6, I believe, on the pop charts.
Right.
And the moment it went down to number 7, we got a call. And I'm not joking. It was literally the moment it went down. Yep. And he was like, yo, I want $100,000 for that word. And actually, at the time, I thought that was crazy, though. I thought that was crazy, but I get
that's
it now.
Him being
but again,
nice.
I was young. That's him being nice, bro. And I didn't realize that.
It's a hit now.
Yeah.
He cut you a break.
He cut me a break. I didn't realize
because he could have pulled some Sting shit and just.
He could have. Yep. Yo, I want half the record. You know what I'm saying?
Or like all the publishing and all that stuff. That's
all
crazy.
The publishing.
So in those 3 years and stuff, did you guys have management and whatnot, and they were helping you with things? Because I know. So how did the whole Michael Maldine?
Yeah. So our
Jermaine's dad.
Jermaine's dad was our manager.
He was your. Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And so, you know, back then, we had released a record in Atlanta and pressed about 200 copies, and we were, you know, passing it around to industry people. One of those people was Ian Burke, who's a very big music dude here in Atlanta. And then he passed it to Michael Maldon. Michael Maldon at that time wasn't really huge. He had, I want to say he was managing or being the tour manager. Still Times Leather, which was Jermaine Dupri's first major label signing. And, but they weren't huge. You know, they were just one act on a shelf of acts, you know what I'm saying? And so he sent it to Michael Maldon. He was sort of just like a tour manager for Brick, you know, the R&B band. And he was just wanting to break off into the industry. He got the Silk Times Leather hookup with his son, Jermaine. I knew Jermaine really well too. So, it was just a matter of, okay, well, he's bigger than anybody else that we knew. Let's go with Michael Malden. He was dope, and he got us the deal between him and his partner, Philip Calloway.
Okay, so you mentioned Jermaine. Are you having any social interaction whatsoever with anyone in the lineage of Atlanta hip hop by the time you get down there? Like, are you, do you know members of the Dungeon family? Do you know Dre and Big Boy or the Goody Mob guys? Like, are you running to anyone that's 6 degrees to hip hop in Atlanta by that point?
Yes and no. No, none of the Dungeon family, because I didn't know them. Like, they weren't a thing when we were first coming out. Okay. So when we were first coming out, it was other acts, MC Shy D and people like that was really making moves in Atlanta on the local scene. And it was more like, well, as you well know, it's like that sort of Miami-based type of style, 120 beats per minute or more type of style. And it wasn't really where we were at, but we knew all these cats. And all of the showcases that we did, they were on those same showcases, or people like them were on those exact same showcases. So it was very much the scene of Atlanta, and we changed that. You know what I mean? Like, bringing a different energy to the Atlanta scene.
Did you think that you had to leave Atlanta in order to make it? Like, we got to move to New York in order to get it a deal, or LA, or?
No, we didn't feel that. In fact, I didn't go to New York until right before we got our deal. That was my first time ever being in New York, period. So I felt like Atlanta had a good shot. Like, we had a good shot. It took us some years, obviously, to make some things happen, but I felt like we had a shot. And there was a scene there that was very musical, very different, than what was going on in New York at the time.
Okay. Were there any other labels that were considering you guys before you?
No. I mean, we tried all the labels, but at that time we were just getting turned down left and right. And this is prior to obviously Black Eyed Peas or PM Dawn or any of those things. Well, PM Dawn actually did put out a record. It just wasn't huge just yet. But
but you guys were also,
it was tough for them to imagine. You know what I'm saying?
Really, even because the thing is that at least now that I look in sort of an aerial view of it, for me, the beginning of what they call the alternative movement of hip hop starts with the Jungle Brothers.
Yeah.
And well, you guys are technically the penultimate. I will say that it ended in my eyes with Diggable Planets. Really before the I guess you could say the eclipse of what we call the chronic came.
Right.
And
get it out of shit.
Part of my not at the time, and I've said this to Dre millions of times, that it took me really 15 years to really open up and admit that, okay, I like the chronic. But I hated the chronic when it first came out.
Yeah.
Really, because I saw, the night that you guys won your Grammy was like right when Tariq and I were starting the Roots, and I was like, okay, now, this is the first step into alternative hip hop getting, a seat at the table. So by the time we get our thing together, it's going to be on and popping. And then and then Diggable Planets was next. So I was like, all right, great. First Arrested Development, then Diggable Planets, then the Roots is next. You watch, and then we get when we get to the train platform and the doors closed, and then we had to wait until like the late 90s in order to get the second wave in. But in your mind, how did you feel about the alternative hip hop tag? Because what I will say is that people that listen to the show know kind of my obsession with sort of like journalism, music journalism in particular.
Yeah.
And so one of the most impossible, like Steph Curry from half shot, eyes closed, opposite direction, shot going in moments in hip hop history to me was you guys winning the coveted Paz and Jop Awards
Yeah.
of 92, which, you know, I don't know if you were aware of it at the time, but for those of you who don't know, you know, I'll say that Lester Bangs was the first like rock journalist that was like a star, you know, like a journalist that was bigger than that.
He was a part of the story.
Yeah, saw himself as, you know, which is kind of a dangerous thing. And then after the age of Lester Bangs, then a gentleman named Robert Christgau, who started working at the Village Voice, of which, you know, that's where like Greg Tate and all these other like black writers are coming up, Dream Hampton, like basically the first wave of what will run like the Source and Vibe in the 90s. But, you know, in 86, 87, 88, what's happening is Robert Christgau is letting like a lot of black writers get a seat at the table to start reviewing hip hop. And this is the first time that I'm reading reviews sort of set in the native tongue of like a black person, you know? And so when I saw y'all win the Paz Jop Awards, and the Paz Jop Awards, basically Christgau gathers like 300 journalists across the United States, and he asked them for their top 10 singles and records of the year. And it varies. So to get, like, the last time I seen a hip hop album win that award was Nation of Millions. Yeah. And before that, a hip hop album hadn't won. So when you guys won that, I was like, yo, this is a fucking moment. At the time when you won that, the Paz Jop Awards, did that mean anything to you, or was it just like, oh, that's cool?
Oh, it's cool. I didn't even know anything about it. In fact, I didn't know anything about it until you just said it now. Yeah. I'm dead serious. I know nothing about it. Nah, nothing about it. Bro.
You mean I'm telling you?
Like, damn, I won that? Word up.
Wait, time out. You mean I'm telling you right now that like
right now
you won like 3 Michelin stars for your restaurant and you had no clue?
I'm looking up Past Job. Like, how I didn't know
that you got like 5 mics in the Source
that.
And you had no.
What you say, Fonte?
I remember the Paz Jop, but like I ain't care what them white people thought. Like, what was the Source saying?
But no, it wasn't that. I know that that's a very easy deflection, Fonte. But what I'm saying was Christgau made it in a very even seat at the table. So this is a mixture of black critics and white critics. So that shit meant a lot more to me.
How you even spell it?
P-A-Z-Z and Jop and Paz.
Yeah, instead of jazz and pop, they spell it Paz and Jop.
Thank
Word
you.
up.
Yeah.
Right.
It was and I wasn't saying that it wasn't, that it wasn't important. I just meant from the standpoint for me as a hip hop fan,
right?
We wasn't really checking for what their opinion was on hip hop. You know what I mean? Like it was just, that was kind of what it was.
I was sorry.
You're a critic.
I'm sorry, man.
You're a hidden critic. You don't know, but you are, Amir.
Oh, I'm definitely a suit. Yeah. I'm a hidden critic and a suit. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Another name that I got called a lot during that experience, but I'll talk about that later.
Okay.
No, but to me, that was like that was some amazing. Like I don't know. Like
yeah.
Often hard to achieve, and you guys did it. But the fact that you didn't even know about it was even more crazier than me.
Well, also I hated the term alternative hip hop because for me personally, I didn't get it. Like for me, it didn't feel like it was an alternative or an alternative to the other hip hop. Like I'm listening to like Yo Bum Rush the Show album, and there's Sophisticated, which is a rock song, and then there's all these live drum loops and stuff like this on Yo Bum Rush the Show record coming from Def Jam, which was obviously a very legitimized label in hip hop. And it wasn't called an alternative record. Chuck D sounded 100% different than any MC, in my opinion, at least, any MC prior to him. And it totally, Flav, the concept of a Flavor Flav and everything he did, and same with Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back record. Don't get me wrong, it was clearly we all celebrated that music, but I'm saying, like, to me, if Too Much Posse and these type songs aren't going to be considered alternative hip hop, then I didn't get it. I didn't get what made it so alternative. Or
you know what, something though, if I'm really, really, truly honest, I was 21 when the album came out, and I didn't buy the album until Mr. Wendell started, until after Unplugged.
Okay.
Then I brought the record.
Gotcha.
I spun, I'm a DJ, so I had, when I buy singles and 45s, it's for the purpose of like playing in the club.
Definitely.
So here's the thing though, when I hear Tennessee and essentially People Every Day, I remember having a little hip hop debate arguments about, is Arrested Development a hip hop group or an R&B group?
That's fucked up. Wow. He rapping.
I was 21, dog. But even then, because he was singing, because he was delivering so melodically, I just, in my mind, rap was check 1 2 1 2. Yo, the mic's on. 1 2 1 2. And I didn't see that. So in my mind, I was like, yo, this is one of the most innovative R&B groups ever. No, hey, another disclosure. One of my first debates with Missy Elliott was over the same thing, because I made the mistake of letting my opinion known on Twitter that I didn't consider Missy Elliott an MC more than I considered her a singer. I consider her a singer that had skills as an MC.
Ooh.
And she lit my DMs up, boy.
Yeah, I know she ain't like that.
Wow.
She considers herself.
She didn't talk to me during the Grammys, but that's another story too. So go ahead.
I'm sorry. I really fell. I'm coming back.
I know you did.
I'm sorry.
I wish you would have seen that.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So at the time, were you getting that similar resistance to, like, and trust me, I'm asking as someone who really had to fight his way into being allowed to play reindeer games?
Yeah.
Oh, you guys are hip hop. You know, Harry Allen used to always tell me, Harry Allen from Public Enemy said, I don't see you guys as hip hop. I see you guys as the hardest R&B group ever. So, like, were you often, like, the lyrics to the second verse, or I guess the first verse of People Every Day, how much resistance were you on a daily basis meeting from the hip hop guard that saw you guys as weirdos?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because I think, ironically, we weren't getting, like, from a in my own body experience, we weren't getting a lot of people doubting the hip hop origin of who we were. Being in my own body, we were getting a lot of pushback from gangster hip hop at the time. I mentioned Ice Cube on People Every Day, and Airly Tariq from our group says, who? After I say his name. So there's like now I meant for it to be a slight in a sense, right? Because I'm trying to compare how I'm going to handle this situation compared to how Ice Cube.
I had to stop the brother.
Exactly.
Brother about being rude. That's right.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Now I'm just hearing. Now I'm 1 second years old. I didn't realize the who.
Yep.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was a question. I just thought.
Yep. And we all knew who Ice Cube was. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But she was, but at the time,
He
I'll
took
be
that
honest,
some way?
He did, and so did therefore Snoop, and so did others who were on the West Coast that were more so repping gangster hip hop in a more direct way, right? So there was that sort of, and not to mention every show that I did, and I'm talking about for 20,000 people, or Arrested Development did. I'm saying. I would say that we're not calling black women bitches and hoes. We don't do that. Our peers do that. We don't do that. So I'm making a very clear statement about who we are, what we're doing, and why it's different than what this dude's doing. So those types of things came off as basically, you know what I'm saying? Like, okay, you're
looking down, you think you're better than
something in those realms. You know what I'm saying?
You were better.
So what happens?
Were better. I'm just.
What happens the first time that you meet them?
He was better.
Cube did that signature growl look that he does. You know how he just it's a cover of every magazine you've ever seen.
Right.
Cube graced the cover of.
Cube scowl.
He gave me
101.
that. Cube scowl 101. He gave me that scowl, right? And then Snoop gave me this sort of like cold thing at the Grammys, and it was that kind of energy. Ice-T at the time, me and him prior to us really blowing up were friends. But after we started to blow up, he distanced himself from me. So it's those kind of things that I felt, but it wasn't necessarily the whole R&B versus hip hop thing. It was more of the stance that we were taking. And I think
it's earthy,
now, mind
earthy
you,
stance.
we're eating at this time. Like we're wrapping up award shows. So this is scary.
Oh, you're also winning. Yes,
say.
you're. Yeah.
So this is like competition now. Like, okay, their stance is very juxtaposed to what we're doing, and they're winning. Like this is not an underground sensation. This is something that's actually taking awards from them, like the Chronic. And so on and
does
so
become because of the yeah. I mean, you guys owned 92. Were you feeling as though the massive success of the group was that you were in danger of hindering the group?
Without a question. Like for me as the leader of the group, I'm worried about that every day. Like every day I'm worried about this transference of Black heads and fans loving our music, and it started to transform into mainly white audiences now loving the music, mainly white critics, heralding the music. It was like, oh man, what does this mean? Like, because everything we're talking about is these Black issues, but then the people that's starting to, come to all the shows is 100% different.
Yeah.
We did Lollapalooza, you know what I'm saying? We did these huge, which I love these festivals, don't get me wrong. Like I'm with bands that I absolutely adore, Primus and Fishbone, and I love these bands. So I'm loving this experience, but it's a hard thing to sort of reckon, right? Because you're this,
to wrap your head
truthfully,
around it.
we're an underground hip hop group talking about Black liberation, and yet we're doing these big rock tours, and we're doing things that I wouldn't take back to this day, but it was tough, right? To try to understand the trajectory, like what's going on.
Before I get to Zingalama because I always wanted to know, because of course, Carol Lewis, of course, gets immortalized and paid in full. Norby Walker's our agent. Carol Lewis is our agent.
Yep.
Word up, indeed, whatever. I remember the reason why my manager chose Carol Lewis is because you guys were her clients and always working. And he saw the basic route that you took, the festivals you were doing. But one of the most shocking things was it seemed like you wanted to undo the progress of the first album with Zingalama, because I remember this whole campaign of, we're going to do a Chitlin circuit tour. We're going to do like small clubs and that sort of thing. And I'm like, wait a minute, y'all sold 4 million. Like I seen you guys open for En Vogue in the summer. Like now it's your turn. Really, I was just mad because I wanted you guys in the shed so that way the Roots get open for y'all. So I'm like, I'm thinking like, wait, why are y'all in these small venues where you're not going to make money? Like, go back to the big venues. But what was your mind state of doing what you call the Chitlin circuit run for the launch of Zingalama?
I felt like we had lost track with the Roots, no pun intended. And I
like it.
And I felt like we weren't connected with the people, and the machine had gotten it became so much a part of everything that I felt scared, to be honest. And I felt like I was floating and my feet weren't on the ground. Like I didn't know what I was connected to. And so we went that direction. To me, it reminded me of what De La did after their success with 3 Feet, right? So De La, their next record was De La's Dead, right? So to me, I don't know, I know them, but I've never talked to them about this, but I have a feeling that it was their way of saying, okay, let's get back to something that has more, I don't know, roots or something than the whole hippie thing. Like we could take that and we could keep going with the hippie thing, but I think that they purposely wanted to kill that and go, to something that felt more real to them.
Yeah, I'll say, man, I was surprised. I was very surprised. I thought Ease My Mind was gonna be like out of here. I thought that would be like a big, you know what I mean? Because I was like, okay, this is them. It sounded like y'all. I'm like, okay, this is them, but you know,
That was my jam.
yeah, that joint
Yeah.
go. Like, what was the relationship with the label like at the time when y'all were making that
Well,
record?
so it was a perfect storm because the label was going through huge changes. So that we just made them, I don't even know how many millions, right?
Right.
And what tends to happen with these big labels is then their presidents start getting changed and people start getting changed, and
And
you know, they
lose your
start to
person that brought you in the building.
facts. You start losing your team and the people that you're working with. Simultaneously, the group is going through it. So internally, me and Headliner are going at war with each other behind the scenes, and we're going through everything. You know what I mean? And that was demoralizing and horrible. And the music industry was changing. You know what I'm saying? Wu was coming in. It was a different energy from what was happening in the early 90s. And well, it still was the early 90s, but like 90, 91, 92 had a different energy than what would start to happen with Wu becoming more and more popular. Nas's Illmatic was out. So it was like, it's just all of those things combined made it a little bit of a different landscape. You know what I'm saying? That landscape internally, group wise, musically on the outside, and label wise.
Wait, before we even go on that, I gotta know. So with the remix for People Every Day, did you make both at the same time, or was it after the fact, after the album was done?
After the album was done. And in fact, when Tennessee Blew Up, which again was the last song we did on the album, right?
Right.
So if you could imagine the whole hip hop argument versus melodic singing argument, there was not really a melodic singing record on our album, except for there was two songs, a song called You and a song called Rainy Revolution. But none of those were planning to be singles for us. So by the time we released Tennessee as our first single, unexpected but last minute move, it was a melodic style. It did so well that I didn't feel confident. I wanted to make a run of this, you know what I'm saying? Because I wanted this to work. So I didn't feel confident that the version of People Every Day that was on the record was going to do it. But the label wanted to release that as a single, People Every Day. The version that's on the record. That's not the version that became the hit.
One that, yeah.
Right.
Exactly. So I was like, yo, I'm doing the singing style on Tennessee. Let me try to basically recreate that same song, different groove, and different melodic style. So I re-sang it, went into the studio, brought the rest of the group in. We did that version. I felt like that was the right call, and it
It's definitely the right call.
Yeah, it took off.
Yeah.
So, as far as the
Revolution, I was like, did we miss Revolution?
No, that's Michael X.
Oh, okay.
So with the singles and basically, you know, between Tennessee and People Every Day and Mr. Window and Natural, I never have that much faith in record companies for like having a plan and successfully executing that plan.
Facts. Neither.
So who was the brains behind the operation that knew exactly who to talk to get you guys in the room, to get you in front of the right faces, to get you on radio, to get you on the right tour? Like who's the person that's going to claim the credit of it was my mastermind thing? Because, you know, not for nothing, but we saw that blueprint and was like, oh, well, this is obviously a blueprint for success.
Yeah.
Like, will the label claim that, oh, we had a plan all along, we knew this was going to happen? Like,
yeah.
Who do you credit?
Say, I would credit a team, and it was Michael Malden, it was myself, and it was Lindsey Williams. Those are the people. Lindsey Williams was our A&R guy at Chrysalis. He also signed Gangstar and released Step in the Arena album and stuff after that. So Lindsey knew hip hop. He is from Harlem. Michael Malden knew us. He understood our vibe, and I knew us. So I feel like between us, we were sort of coming up with what should be this, how should we navigate that? And the label just really followed suit. I'll never forget being I think I was 22-year-old dude going for the first time up to these tall high rises on Avenue of the Americas, New York, and having these meetings with all these execs at this long table, trying to explain to them why and how Arrested Development can make it. You know what I mean? And having marketing meetings, like talking about marketing strategies. So
it's just
it's
usually
tough, and it's crazy.
You got to talk about working with in the Malcolm X. I can only imagine. Like, I was really excited seeing Revolution for the end of it. I have to know though, when Spike's approaching you about this,
yeah,
in your mind, especially in 1992, are you seeing having the flagship song for a Spike Lee film? Is it pressure? Because I mean, we pretty much are thinking like, oh, you got to come with someone on the level of Fight the Power or something like of that level, or but you know, like there was one point where a song associated with the Spike Lee film could elevate the so like what is that like how did that all come about?
That's crazy.
It was incredibly stressful because Public Enemy smashed it with Fight the Power, and the way Spike positioned Fight the Power throughout the film made it such a pivotal part of that film. I mean, it's an undeniable part of that film.
Right.
You know, it's part of the fabric of the film, not just the soundtrack. You know what I'm saying? So coming in after that was extremely tough. And I felt a lot of pressure, you know what I mean, to try to make sure that it was. Look, I mean, Bomb Squad is a whole crew, you know what I'm saying? But for me as a producer, still with that ASR 10, you know what I'm saying? And HR 16, Elisa's, you know, I'm striving to make sure that it has the layers and that it has the potency of something that deserves to be in this film, but also making sure that it's still us and not somebody else. You know what I'm saying? Making sure it's still who we are as a group and what we do.
Knowing how tenacious Spike is, you know, even for like we did a song for Bamboos or whatever. So I know how Spike is in terms of him putting the pressure on you.
Facts.
How many times did he have to come to you to be like, because even Chuck will say, I think Keith Shockley told me that Spike didn't like the first 3 drafts of Fight the Power.
Yeah.
And the 4th time they finally nailed it.
Yeah.
You know, because I was asking Keith, like, why name something Fight the Power and not have like the Isley Brothers or a reference of that? And he talked about like, we did a whole nother thing. And then Spike was like, nah, this ain't it or whatever.
Right.
And I often know that sometimes it's hard to take criticism from a non-musician. Yeah. They just don't know or whatever. And, you know, you guys have like 4 top 10 singles at the time. So it was like, you could have easily been in Can't Tell Me Nothinville.
Yeah.
So like, how much back and forth was it until he was like, that's it. That's the one.
You know, what's funny? We didn't get a lot of back and forth from Spike on that. And he was very hands-on though. So he was in the studio when we recorded that. He was shouting Revolution. He insisted that it be an anthem right from the jump. And so he really trusted in me to deliver. And he didn't give me any, the only fighting back that he gave me was the video, because I wanted to have a more militant video.
Did he shoot it?
Yes, he shot it. He shot it in Brooklyn. We shot it in Brooklyn with him. It was amazing experience. We shot that entire video in 7 hours. And if you look at that video again, you'll see probably 200, 300, 400, 500 people, I'm not sure, marching down the street with us in one scene, another maybe 100 or 200 people in a classroom with us in a school. I mean, there's a lot of sets, and we did all of that in 7 hours. It was just amazing. So yeah, it was definitely his hands-on experience all over it, but he didn't give me a lot of fight back. And prior to us, Gangstar had did it's a jazz thing for Mo Better Blues.
Mo Better, right?
Yeah.
And that took a little bit of the pressure off. But for me personally, as big as our group was, I was really wanting to, you know, go somewhere near that Fight the Power energy.
Okay. All right. I gotta ask the question. So again, longtime listeners know of my journalism obsession. So without really getting into the specifics of it, I kind of want to ask you about the aftermath of it. And we actually did an entire episode with Danielle Smith, writer. And at the time I was living in London, and there weren't American publications. It was hard to get, now like everything's digitally colonized, so I can get the same magazines that you're getting all across the world. So, I'm getting care packages from my publicist in the States to London. And of course, the Prince issue of Vibe magazine comes out. And, I had never experienced a Black takedown article before. Yeah. And again, like I internalized, like I almost felt like that was my group she was talking about. I think maybe these questions I'm asking you simply because like vicariously I was living in your footsteps and whatnot. And okay, what they do, that's what I'm doing. And they do that, students, that stuff and that. So, I get the magazine, I read the Prince article and everything. I was like, all right, read the Arrested Development article, and
Trouble in Paradise
I was like, yo, like, I'm used to in Black journalism, I'm used to like Ride On magazine. You know what I mean?
Facts.
Like, hey, what opposites do you find attractive in the opposite sex? And what kind of foods do you like? So, this level of journalism I'd never seen before.
Yeah.
I'd never seen a takedown. And for those of you who don't know, a takedown article is kind of where I believe the artist doesn't realize that they're being ambushed.
Facts.
In the interview.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, same publication kind of sort of did that to my group initially on the Fugees cover story, which really fanned the flames of a rivalry that really wasn't a rivalry at all, but
Yeah.
But I just want to know, can you walk me through the process from which you found out that this article was not going to be the glowing A+ report card that Arrested Development had been getting up until that point?
Yeah.
Like,
bro,
what can you just walk me through it? Like,
it was literally a kick in the ass. Because I was cool with Danielle. Like, she came to Atlanta.
And she said this. That
she
came
loved
to
the
Atlanta.
first record. We hung out. We hung out with Danielle. It was all love. Like, it was so much love. And we needed that article because we had already been facing backlash. We had already been getting a lot of different narratives about where we're going, who we are. Not from a like internal group, like any beefs going on in the group, but just from a standpoint of what I was saying earlier, as far as, now we're sort of these pop music darlings, which we never were on that tip, but that's what we had sort of become to some extent. We're winning all these awards. We're doing these big Lollapalooza rock tours and all of this. So that article was dear to me. And for me, it was a sister, a Black sister that's come down to Atlanta to hang with us. So she had total access to everybody. And long story short, unknown to me.
Was that always the protocol? Like, because even now, like me and Tariq do the Roots interviews. There's 11 of us, but it's Mick and Keith. Like you felt comfortable in just letting, hey, talk to everybody.
I did. And
so you didn't know it was coming?
Not at all. Like, that was 100% one of those, like, damn. When I read it is when I knew that that's what the take was. Because that's not what I was getting from Danielle in person, like eye to eye.
Right.
And with the other members with me too, by the way. So like, we're with her and I'm not getting that. Now, mind you, she talks to everybody separately as well. And, this article starts to, listen, there was turmoil in the group. I'm not denying that.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't the narrative of where we even were at as a group. So we were going through turmoil, but we were marching on. Like, that's where we're at.
Right. Y'all were going through turmoil, but y'all weren't trying to sell it.
we were definitely not trying to sell it. And also it wasn't the major narrative of where we were at as a group. It was a narrative, but it wasn't the narrative. So when I saw that article and it was the narrative of the entire article, I was like, I lost my faith in journalism from that point forward, because I was like, damn, like that was, like you said, it was a takedown. And I don't know what she said. I don't even know if y'all addressed this when you interviewed her, but to me, it either had to been some type of thing where, you know, it was a good look for her to do some kind of story, or it's maybe her boss or uppers was like, yo, come at it this way or whatever. I don't know what it was, but it was crazy.
You know what? She I don't want to put words in Danielle's mouth, but I definitely I can't even right. It wasn't a I did it, and so what? Like it was definitely a remorseful, like sort of afterthought. And she explained, like, you have to understand that I wasn't coming mean-spirited. I believe that there was a pressure to not make, and again, you know, as I explained earlier, Black journalism before The Source, before Vibe magazine, was basically just limited to either Ebony magazine, where everything was glowing, or Ride On magazine, where everything was kind of frothy. You know what I mean?
Facts.
But not like real journalism. And so I remember her feeling like, I believe she said that it was a very conflicting thing to do. Like, as a journalist, do I tell the truth or do we protect? Because, you know, also I know the rules of Black people is that you don't spill your dirty laundry in front of the world to see. And me reading that article made me uber obsessive in terms of who we talk to. Like that was the point.
Facts.
That was the point in which I started, you know, studying every journalist, every byline, looked at other articles they wrote.
Yeah.
Even to this day, I mean, I'm not as vigilant now as I was. But it just, for me, I was just like, yo, like, this group might never recover from this.
We didn't.
How did you, so mentally and physically, to go that high and then to be in a car crash that wasn't by your intentional design, but still a car crash nevertheless? How did you guys continue with promoting the album, or like, was it a wrap after that?
It was a wrap after that. I mean, by and large. And so for me, I'm literally pissed at her. Like, dude, I saw her at events, and I literally, you know what I'm saying? I won't go there. And I was pissed, and I didn't talk to her at all. I was literally bitter towards her. I think for me, it was the first time I saw sensationalistic journalism for me. It was my first introduction to it. So like you said, articles prior were one thing, and different magazines covered things in one way. But after I saw that, I was like, oh, okay. Because it's one thing to say the truth about there's some beef going on behind the scenes. To me, I think I was cool with that. Like, I was all right with that. And that's why I was allowing everybody to speak. But to make that the whole trajectory of the story, it damaged us. And Vibe was very much a huge deal at the time. And from a Black perspective, we needed that cosign at the time. Like, we needed that from a marketing standpoint for this group. We needed that love in order to, you know, validate the direction we're continuing to go in. And without it, it was tough. It was real tough.
No circle back for you and Danielle.
I mean, at this age, I'm now 54. I can circle back with her, but But I'll be honest, like, during that time period, probably for probably 10 years, I couldn't talk to her.
Those are our petty years too. Yeah, it's the height.
Yeah, you know what I mean. I couldn't do it.
You talked about around like 96, like when you did your solo record, and you were feeling suicidal at the time. What took you to that mind state?
I think it was what you just talked about, Quest, was like, it was the drop and how far it was. You know what I mean? Like that's tough to digest for any person, in my opinion.
Yeah, dude, I was going to say, you're literally the first person to call me to do something. So I forgot, like, you did a solo project.
It was my first music video.
I was in your video, you, Foley, myself.
Me, you, Foley, Dallas, Austin.
That's right. He was playing keyboards, right?
Yep, he was playing organ on that.
And Ramon Harvey was your manager. I remember you and Ramon picking me up.
Yep.
You and Ramon picking me up from the hotel.
Exactly. Yeah.
We had him on here too, Speech.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was a fan of y'all's already. Like, before I met you, the label showed me y'all's album and was like, "Yo, peep this out." So I was a fan already. And at that time, the label that our label, it was no longer Chrysalis, it was called EMI, and it was sort of morphing, and D'Angelo was signed as well, but he wasn't out yet. So I was hearing a lot of the stuff that they was about to go into the direction of. And that's how I knew about y'all. So I was like, yo, I love this group. And so that's why I, reached out to you.
For y'all, when you were talking about, being in that like kind of deep depressive period, what got you out of it? How did you get through it?
It was through time, but also spirituality. In 96, I released my solo album in 96. I was very suicidal, and a woman that I auditioned for a tour I was doing in Amsterdam was a Christian. Okay. And she started talking to me and my wife, and long story short, I became a Christian, and that truly saved my life. It truly made me think of things differently and see myself as valuable outside of wherever a record was at, and
whatever chart says or
whatever the industry was saying, and my music career was going. So I saw value outside of that, and that changed my perspective.
96 was also around the time I used to see you on campus, so you were going through all kinds of enlightening
facts. And that was, I went back to school at Clark. I never went to Clark prior, but I went to school in general, back to college, to really I wanted to be around academia in a sense, and I wanted to be around that sense of learning and curiosity and things that I felt was more pure in life.
Wait, you two went to Clark at the same time?
He went to Clark as Speech, Amir. Very brave.
What was that like?
Yeah, this was
because I dream of going back. I dream of going back to college, but time won't allow that. So what is that like? Like,
it was
not
tough.
Starting over again, but just.
Yeah, it was tough because we had already blown up. This is prior to Zingala Maduni, but it was after 3 Years album. So we're huge. I'm very noticeable, very known. And so it was tough. And our schedule was absolutely insane. So honestly, I could only stay for a semester. I had to drop back out because it wasn't doable for any long term, unless I would have quit the industry, which I wasn't willing to do at that point. So
yeah, you were still actively releasing music, and you guys were, still there's a momentum and outside of the United States.
Facts, very much so. Yeah.
Mace did the same thing, though. I don't know what it is about Clark, but Mace went to Clark after he was Mace too. So
yeah.
Preacher Mace.
Yeah.
Did he get?
I think his ministry was on Clark initially. Yeah.
Yeah. That's after my time.
So 30 years, and I'm gonna wrap up soon. 30 years into this business. Can you tell me, like, what have you learned? What have you, like, what your overall experience is in terms of what you learned, things that you could have changed, or experiences that you've had? I didn't even ask about, like, what does success feel like in 1992, 93? Like, amongst the people you meet, like, did you even have an inner circle? Like, did you become friends with other artists or not? Or
so to answer that last part, yes and no. I mean, I was cool with certain artists, but not really friends, because everybody was on the East Coast or West Coast, and we was down in Atlanta, and it just was a different energy. You know, back then hip hop was still very divided. You know, it was West Coast, East Coast. The South was still not thoroughly respected. If you remember Andre's speech at the awards, it's like
something to say, yeah.
And that was after us. So imagine prior to that how little respect, you know, the South got in many ways. So so to answer the question, no, I don't think so. And also I was very, I'm a very like everyday people kind of guy. So by nature, I didn't find super value in hanging with like cliques in the industry type thing. Like that wasn't my thing. So if we clicked, it was good, but that wasn't what I was searching for in a sense.
So you weren't going like making pilgrimage to New York to go record shopping with blah 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 blah,
no.
Hey, when you come to Atlanta, come hang with us. And
yeah, I would start doing that later, like much later. But no, I wasn't doing that at the time.
Does the Atlanta hip hop community look to you to know that you kind of started this ball rolling in a way? Like, do you feel the respect from Atlanta in that way?
Yes and no. Yes, when they meet me in person, no, when it comes to documenting it. Like, whenever there's a documentary about Atlanta, somehow we're sort of left out of it. And it starts with Organized Noise, and it starts with Outkast and Goody Mob. It's a funny thing.
Let me go on record to give you the flowers and basically says that, yeah, you know, and we really haven't, again, like run into each other all that much because
this would have been in person, by the way, in Atlanta if Speech was in Atlanta when we was in Atlanta.
Oh, he's part of the Atlanta run?
Yeah, he was going to be part of the Atlanta run.
Yeah.
Okay.
Facts. Yeah.
I see.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your wisdom, no, God. Go ahead.
No. But I'm just saying that, yeah, no, I do acknowledge that you guys, you know, planted a seed, and oftentimes, yeah, history doesn't remember pioneers. Like often people that come after the fact and sort of perfect a formula, that sort of thing, they get the flowers and they get the accolades. And, you know, you guys definitely, whether people really want to admit it or not, like, you know, you guys are responsible for a movement. You're definitely responsible for the movement that I'm still allowed to participate, you know, 30 years later into my life. So I definitely I thank you for that, man.
You know. That means everything. It really does. It means a lot.
And didn't you just do a show with Christian and Tariq?
Yeah, I actually did a show in
Christian's
New Jersey.
Thing.
Yeah, I did a show in New Jersey at the PAC Center. With Black Thought, with Yassine, with Christian.
Yassine showed up. Did he show up on time? Did he show up on time?
He actually was on time. He was before time, actually, and he rocked. He did his thing. Rakim was supposed to be on it, and he broke his foot, our ankle, and then Chuck D was supposed to be on it. He got COVID. So
Damn.
But you killed it.
So I guess my last question is, first of all, have you had any communication whatsoever with the initial original members of the band? What's the relationship like now?
It's dope. Okay. It's never gonna be like it was in the early days, but we're like mad cordial with one another, mad, you know, when we see each other, it's literally like seeing an old best friend, right? So, and in particular, me and Headliner, because that's where the main split was, you know what I mean? And the group sort of split on one side or the other according to that main split, you know what I'm saying? So Headliner and I were cool, you know what I mean? The issues are what it was, and I don't think it will ever not be there, but we're real cool. And, you know, like if he has issues with his family, I'm the first to call him and try to see what I could do, you know what I'm saying? And to help, and vice versa. So there's a lot of love there. And I think as the older we've gotten, the more we're able to dead the stuff that, you know, is sort of irrelevant in the gist of time, you know, as time moves on.
Well, not to hint too much, but, you know, it is kind of the 30th anniversary of that movement. So if there ever was a time to sort of rekindle or respark a flame, whatever, like, you know, just having participated in an event in which we're celebrating our history. And I know hip hop has a lot of disdain for being seen as old or ancient or sages or whatever, the non-sexy term is for having age of wisdom, but I've learned probably after the Grammy experience how important it is to acknowledge and celebrate a history. And
I agree. I totally
you
agree.
guys have that. So I really hope
It's not the
that
last.
one day I see it all come back full circle, because the world needs that, because
Yes.
I still spin the music, and the magic, the magic still works.
Which
So
thing,
there's an
Speech? That's like a
audience out there.
70% possibility, or 60%. What we thinking? What we thinking?
No, I mean it's way he's gotten way better than that now. We worked all of that out now.
Also, it can really
Make it happen.
Yeah. And last question. This is such a random question, but you talked about land and stuff in Georgia earlier, and I was just curious if you're linked in with those families that bought that 97 acres in Georgia.
No, but I that movement has been something that's important for a while.
Wait, what is that?
19 Black families bought 97 acres for a safe space for Black people. They're building a community. So
Yeah.
I was just, it seems so in speeches like Lane.
And it doesn't have anything to do with Dr. York?
No.
What?
And it's dope houses too. Dope. They're building
Nice.
really well.
I'll send you the article, Amir.
Yeah, I want to see
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
Well, Speech, brother,
Brother,
I thank
you.
for taking the time out to speak with us. And
thank you. Man.
Again, you're a legend, and I thank you so much for doing this with us. This is QLS, y'all. Another classic episode. Speech, our guest on the show, Sugar Steve.
Thank you, Speech.
Man, thank y'all. Thank you.
Fontigolo.
Yes, sir.
And Laia.
Every day. Come on.
Of course, on behalf. I know once I hang up, I know there's like a question I forgot to ask. But,
I know you just, I see you going slow trying to
I
figure
have
out.
one last question.
yes, hit me.
Can we
Do
play a game of horseshoes?
Game of horseshoes.
Perfect ending.